The Roush R2300 727 horsepower Phase 2 kit will be for the S550 GT owners out there who are looking for absolutely massive power gains over a stock or naturally aspirated setup and would like to go with an all-inclusive turnkey kit from one of the leaders in Ford tuning. Now, Roush does advertise this kit at 727 horsepower and 610 pound-feet of torque at the crank when using the included calibration from Roush. Of course, adding this much power to your ride doesn't exactly come cheap, as the Roush kit will run you upwards of $7,600, and the install will be a bit of a test for my weekend wrenchers out there, so expect a full-blown 3 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, with a little bit more detail to come later in the video. But let's dive headfirst into what kind of power you might be able to expect when bolting up the Roush TVS Phase 2 kit to your Coyote powered GT. And as I pointed out earlier, the advertised crank horsepower numbers are when using the included calibration from Roush. However, with this particular car, we did end up installing a custom tune from our friends over at VMP. Baseline numbers with our GT gave us 420 horsepower and 390 pound-feet of torque at the rear wheels. With that Roush Supercharger kit installed, the car is now making 604 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque again at the rear wheels. That's good for peak gains of 184 horsepower over those baseline numbers and gains of as much as 172 horsepower and 145 pound-feet of torque under the curve. Now, obviously, there are a ton of variables at play with dyno numbers here, including your tune, your transmission, bolt-ons, dyno, weather conditions, and more. So ultimately your results might vary slightly compared to what we saw with our car. However, I can guarantee you two things. You are going to be seeing sizable gains in both horsepower and torque no matter what modifications you have done, and you will almost certainly need some stickier tires to help you put this new power down to the pavement, as I quickly found out when boosting the Coyote in my own GT. But what do you say we break this kit down a little bit further? And let's face it, guys, without a doubt, the star of this particular Phase 2 kit is going to be the Eaton TVS 2300 rotor pack, which is the next generation, or step up, if you will, from the older Eaton M122 Roots blower. Now, that thing was found on cars like the Terminator, the SVT Lightnings, of course, and the pre-2013 GT 500s. Now, the TVS, or Twin Vortices Series as it's known as, is an extremely popular design that essentially is going to utilize a twin 4-rotor lobe pack loaded in the housing here, and those rotors are twisted 160 total degrees, which essentially is just going to create a much more efficient flow over those older style blowers, and is just able to make more power at lower boost levels. But what are going to be some of your big benefits when checking out a TVS from Roush? Well, in my opinion here, gang, the biggie is going to be the instantaneous power, along with that nice fat torque curve. Now, the power delivery is very linear and predictable, making them a great choice for just about any driving style. You have to compare that to a turbo or centrifugal blower, which can sometimes suffer from a little bit of lag depending on your setup. Another big thing about going with a TVS style blower is the relatively simple layout, making for a slightly easier install. It's not going to be night and day, but it certainly will be noticeable. I say that because with a turbo car, ultimately you have to alter the exhaust manifolds, along with running your intercooler piping, oil lines, change the exhaust, along with a host of other things. That's not really the case here with a Roush TVS blower. Now, this thing is simply just going to replace your intake manifold on top of your motor, meaning you don't have to change the exhaust or plumb a bunch of intercooler piping or anything like that. Now, sure guys, ultimately yes, there will be some modification needed, as we'll discuss in a second, but far less in my opinion than installing or building a turbo kit. But let's get right back to the Phase 2 kit here from Roush, and as I did point out earlier, this is an all-inclusive kit, and yes, I know I don't have everything on the table here with me in this video because I just simply don't have enough space. I can give you a brief little rundown of what you can expect to find when opening the box or boxes for the very first time. In addition to the TVS rotor pack, you will also be receiving the lower unit here, which essentially is your air-to-water intercooler portion of the blower. Now, this guy is just going to help work with the low temp radiator or heat exchanger whatever you want to call it, to lower the charge temps or intake air temps entering the blower through the intercooler, making for a little bit more power. Now, this kit does not include any external fans. However, that is something you can add on your own if you are interested. Roush does also include their twin 60mm throttle body and their 110mm cold air intake system and corresponding airbox with the Phase 2 kit. And I'll be the first to admit, guys, the intake isn't necessarily the biggest on the market in regards to your mass airflow size or housing, and it's certainly not the flashiest either. However, the design is on point, and that's what we've come to expect from Roush. And ultimately, it will lead to a nice, smooth mass airflow signal, which is something your tuner will certainly appreciate if you do go the custom tuning route as we did here. And this is a great time to mention the tuning once again with this kit, because you do have some options here. Now, the kit does include that Roush Calibration, as we've already covered, which is backed by their 3-year, 36,000-mile warranty. Now, this calibration would need to be flashed by your local dealer using the Ford-specific tool, along with the RDT or Roush software. Now, I will be the first to admit, guys, the Roush Calibration can be a bit conservative, and some people might argue that they leave a little bit of power on the table. However, some people might value a conservative tune and a corresponding warranty over an extra 50 to 100 horsepower. So ultimately, that's for you to decide. On the other hand, you can certainly entertain the custom tuning route as we did with the car in this video, but keep in mind that will add to the final price tag and you will not be able to retain that Roush warranty. Ultimately, you're gonna find a ton of options out there in the custom tuning world, including some of our options on the site. For instance, I went with VMP and I have had absolutely no complaints. But again, that is a decision for you guys to make at the end of the day. But let's shift our focus back to the Phase 2 kit here, and we've talked blower, we've talked intake, we've talked cooling, we've talked tune. Now let's talk about some fueling. The Phase 2 kit does include 47-pound injectors in addition to a plug-and-play fuel pump booster, which is enough to feed the blown Coyote using the Roush Calibration. Now, if you do go that custom tuning route, some tuners might try to steer you towards maybe a larger injector depending on your power goals, or if you want to use E85, but again, that is an added cost you would have to factor in. Finally, Roush does include the 80mm pulley with the Phase 2 kit, which, depending on your mods, will put you right in the neighborhood of 10 pounds of boost or so with your particular setup. Now, the nice thing about the TVS blower here, or the pulleys, is that changing them out takes literally a few minutes tops and doesn't require any crazy tools or pullers or anything like that. Rounding out the kit, guys, you will find a number of hoses, wiring, Coulter spark plugs, brackets, a new degas bottle for the heat exchanger, and a number of other parts to again make this a 100% turnkey kit. Switching gears, let's talk about the installation, and as I pointed out earlier in this video, guys, you're gonna be looking at a full-blown 3 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter here, and anywhere from a day to, more realistically, a weekend in the shop or garage to get knocked out, depending on if this is your first TVS or not. And speaking of expertise, this isn't something I'd necessarily recommend for my first-time wrenchers out there, as it can be a little in-depth and a little tricky. So if you're kind of a novice wrencher, you might want to take this one to your local speed shop instead. On the other hand, if you do plan on getting down and dirty with the Roush installation, here's a few things to expect. First things first, make sure you have a solid set of tools before getting started, along with a few of your favorite adult beverages. Now, along with that, make sure you print out those installation instructions before you get going. Roush has a very detailed write-up on their site that you can either print out or pull up on a laptop for reference. Now, your first step will be disassembly. That front bumper cover will need to come off along with the intake manifold itself. Once your disassembly is all complete, you will need to modify the front engine cover. Now, this process might be a little bit different for some owners out there, but basically the idea is you will need to grind off some material using a grinder or cutoff wheel in order to make room for the blower and its accessories along with the belt itself. Once that cover has been modified, you can get to work installing the actual supercharger and fuel rail setup. With the supercharger installed, install the throttle body along with all of your vacuum lines and your electrical connections. Now you'll need to move up to the front of the car in order to install your heat exchanger or LTR along with the corresponding water lines. With the heat exchanger installed and plumbed, it's time to move on to the belt assembly. Now there are a few brackets and idler pulleys that will need to be installed first using the included instructions before the actual belt can go on. Roush does include the belt routing diagram in the instructions to help you out here. With the belt in place, it's time to finish up the rest of your electrical connections, re-gap the plugs according to the instructions if you haven't already done so, and then refill the cooling system along with the new degas bottle, being sure to prime the system first before the final startup. Reassemble the front end of the car, upload your tune, fire the thing up, and check for any leaks. Now keep in mind, this is a very general walkthrough of the job, but it will give you a better idea of what you'll be dealing with. Now if you want an even better idea about the install itself, feel free to check out the instructions on Roush's site before getting started just to see if this install will be for you or maybe not. So wrapping this one up, as a proud owner of a Roush TVS blower on my own Coyote, I can tell you that the Phase 2 kit is an awesome way to totally transform your Mustang, and you can grab one right here at AmericanMuscle.com.